Well, I thought that as we start this message, we'd start a little differently. Because I like to be different. Most of you know that. Am I not on yet? According to this, I'm on. Not saying anything here? Hello? I'm green. I'm on. Nope. Now I'm mute. Now I'm not.
Go ahead.
Okay, we'll keep going. All right. So before we started, I wanted to start with a few questions. I realize that due to my fault, I'll go with my fault. Not everybody may or may not have a outline to go through, but it is important that you have the outline because there are questions on there I was going to have you go through. So if you don't have an outline, I have outlines right here. I can hand them to you. Because again, I didn't happen to copy early enough. I didn't happen to have the bulletins. Anybody else? And I'm okay to stop and take a moment and take care of business. So, okay. So before I ask you the questions, I want you to know that as I prepared for today, these questions are the same questions that I had to answer myself. In fact, these are questions that plagued me all week long. As I went throughout the week, God continued to bring them to mind many times over the different situations that I was in. And as I sometimes had to force myself to answer them honestly, I had to do that and find that I would learn, and I have learned, some very interesting things about myself, about where I was in life, about the path that I had been traveling, and about where God wanted me to be. So before we read the text this morning, I just want to take a couple minutes and have you guys answer these questions. So on the back side of your outline, on the bottom, there are these questions. I want you to first of all think about over the last week where you went, what you did, who you encountered. Did you go to work? Did you spend time at home? Did you go shopping? Did you meet a friend for lunch? Did you spend time at dinner with your family at the table? Did you come to church? Think about those times and things in the last week you were part of and answer these questions. First question, if I only had blank, I would feel better, or things would be better. If I only had blank, I would feel better, or things would be better. This week, as you were going throughout shopping, home, and work, second question. Throughout this week, what did you look for? What did you seek after this week? Was it a little more money, a new job, a way to feel better, more time, more rest, a new thing, a new relationship, a better relationship? As you look over the actions that you did, not just what you thought of, what the actions you actually performed, what did they indicate you were seeking and searching for? More food in the fridge. That last chocolate chip cookie. What did you seek and search for? Number 3, given these actions and the words you used, what would you say characterizes your life? Or how would others describe you? Would it be kind and generous? Skinflint and cheapskate? One who's looking to get ahead in life? Ahead at work? A friend? A traitor? How would those that have been around you or you've been around, how would they describe you from the actions and the words you had this week? Ain't cutting no slack this morning. And finally, number 4, what would others say that you do? What would they say you do? Based on the actions and the things you said, conversations you have, what would they say you do? Would they say that you repair things, that you design things, that you engineer things, that you teach, maybe you're a caregiver, maybe you mend relationships, or maybe you tear them apart? Are you a gossip preventer or a gossip promoter? What are the things, how would people describe you? How do you think? Maybe you're like some people in life that feel like people don't even notice them, that they're too small, that they're too invaluable, unvaluable, too normal, too plain. They're in a crowd and they don't stand out at all. Or perhaps worse, maybe you feel that people are against you. Maybe you feel like people are putting up barriers for your success, or people are purposely shunning you and causing you pain and heartache. I know I felt that way this week. Felt like sometimes people were putting barriers against me, trying to make me fail. In our text this morning, we're going to take a look at a situation in which several perspectives are shown. We'll see a man who seemingly had it all, and yet he was still searching. We'll see a prejudiced people who expected amazing things, but ended up shunning the very thing they needed most. And we'll see that when we get one thing right, everything else can fall into place. Turn with me this morning to our focal passage in Luke chapter 19, as we discover together what it looks like being found in a crowd. Luke chapter 19 is our focal passage. Can you figure out which one is the one that's different? There's actually a second one that's different as well. Can you figure out the second one that's different? So the yellow pepper is the one that's different, that's obvious. The second one is the one that's right above the K and the E. It has a broken stem, which you wouldn't necessarily notice, but one different. Stand with me together as we read together Luke chapter 19, verses 1 through 10. Luke 19, chapter 19, verses 1 through 10. It starts, he, that being Jesus, he entered Jericho and was passing through, and there was a man called by the name Zacchaeus, and he was a chief tax collector, and he was rich. Zacchaeus was trying to see who Jesus was and was unable because of the crowd, for he was small in stature. So he ran on ahead and climbed up into a sycamore tree in order to see him, for he was about to pass through that way. When Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for today I must stay at your house. And he hurried and came down and received him gladly. When they saw it, they all began to grumble, saying, he has gone to be the guest of a man who is a sinner. Zacchaeus stopped and said to the Lord, behold, Lord, half of my possessions I will give to the poor, and if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will give back 4 times as much. And Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, because he too is the son of Abraham. But the Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which was lost. Father God, would you stop at this morning and this time, and we ask that you would impart your word to us. Lord, you would open our hearts and our minds to understand. Send your Spirit to translate. Lord, don't let my fumbling or my lack of words get in the way, but Father, may your people hear your voice. And Lord, may your children respond in love and adoration in the way that they should go. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. You may be seated. So our story this morning opens as Jesus is passing through a town named Jericho. A town with a wealth of history, a wealth of culture, and quite simply put, a place of wealth. Jericho means place of fragrance in the Greek. And it's a noted city, abounding in balsam and honey and cypress and myrobalanus and roses and other fragrant products. That's why it's known as a place of fragrance. It was near the north shore of the Dead Sea in the tribe of Benjamin, between Jerusalem and the Jordan River. So you can see this is actually a map of the 3rd year of Jesus' travels. And you can see stop number 23 there. That's where Jericho is. All right? It's believed to be one of the oldest cities in the world, built prior to the conquering of Joshua, which occurred in around 1400 BC, and rebuilt again around 874 BC at the cost of the eldest and youngest son. And at this point in the story, it has had 900 years of history from that rebuilding point. That's 4.5 times the age of America. And we're only at the point where Jesus comes into town. As far as location, it's a strategic location. It's a major crossing between the Jordan connecting Moab to the Mediterranean Sea. It has a lot of resources, surrounded by an agricultural flat plain 4 miles from the Jordan River, and it has a perennial spring which makes it a productive tropical oasis. It was also the center of balsam trade and known for the abundant sycamore fig trees. So lots of different sycamore fig trees around. The people, it was home to the Hasmonean kings of Judah in the 1st century BC, and the eastern capital for Herod the Great. In our passage this morning, it comprised of Romans and Jews and a rather large population of Jewish priests. When I was looking, some actually said there was up to 12,000 priests. Part of the history was the fact that half of the priests would go to Jerusalem and half the priests would go to Jericho to gather the oils and the fragrances that they needed during the festival times to bring to Jerusalem and actually perform the different festivals. So it was a thriving city, serving as the gateway of commerce between Moab and the Mediterranean nations, and it was the perfect place for Rome to exercise its control and collect the plethora of taxes that it could have. Enter in one of our main characters, Roman numeral 2 on your outline, person, that is Zacchaeus, who seems to be caught in the middle. Caught in the middle. And what we learn about Zacchaeus is, from verse 2, that he was a man of business. Remember, verse 2 said, there was a man called by the name Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector, and he was rich. So he was a chief tax collector. And the taxes that he collected for Rome, like I said, were many. Rome had taxes for quite a lot of things. In fact, almost everything you can think of they had taxes for. They had income tax, import tax, export tax, crop taxes, sales tax, property tax, the emergency tax. I think that's when they stopped on the road and said, it's an emergency, you need to give me some money. But they had all sorts of different taxes that were out there. And the tax collectors from Rome quite literally could do just what I said. They could stop anybody at any time along the road, and they could say, I'm here to collect your tax. Give me your tax money. And then name a price, and the person would have to give them the tax money that they named. That was the way that Rome collected the taxes. Now, Rome had set up also a Roman provincial administrator over the province that would collect all of the tax and send it to Rome. And that administrator would then go hire local people to become the tax collectors. And as the areas were larger and larger, they would set up chief tax collectors. And that's what we find out about Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was a chief tax collector. And so the chief tax collector got to have tax collectors underneath him. It's the first pyramid scheme, I think. And whatever the tax collectors underneath him collected, he could then extract from there the taxes for Rome plus anything he wanted, and then send the rest off to Rome. The only thing required was that Rome got their tax. Anything above that and beyond that, the tax collectors got to keep as part of their income, as it were. So, our chief tax collector, Zacchaeus, probably had several people underneath him that were out collecting taxes for him as well. That being said, he was also a man of wealth. He had lots of wealth. It says that in verse 2 that he was rich. New American Standard said rich. Most of the translations say rich, and a few say wealthy. The Greek is plusios, which means wealthy, abounding in material supplies. In other words, he had need of nothing. He had what he wanted. No doubt he had nice clothes. He had probably the equivalent of Gucci or Ralph Lauren or Dolce. He was well fed. He went to the finest restaurants. He had the best food. And he could pay to do anything he ever wanted to do. Maybe he took a rafting trip along the Jordan. Maybe he took a Mediterranean cruise when he wanted. He could at any point shell out the money and go see maybe a matinee at one of the amphitheaters. Not only that, he'd have cash left over to buy the large bucket of popcorn. So from the outside, it looked like Zacchaeus had it all together and he wanted for nothing. And yet, that's not what we're told in the story. Instead, we find that he was a man with a desire. He was seeking something. Look at verse 3. Verse 3 says, Zacchaeus was trying to see who Jesus was. Now, the region around Jericho, back in our map, remember? That region around there was the same region that John the Baptist had his ministry out in the wilderness. It was the same locations that Jesus was baptized by John. It was also a region where Jesus called 5 of his disciples from. And it was a region where he traveled through many times throughout his ministries, performing different miracles and healings and so forth. So,